Hello and welcome back to another episode of Scale Model Fun. It's great to see you here again. Thanks so much for joining me. Today I'm going to be building the North American F51-D Mustang, but with a bit of a twist. I'm going to be doing the South African Air Force version of this iconic aircraft, and I've got some really nice decals from Ames, which include Commonwealth and Korea markings. As I read on the decals, this squadron was attached to the 18th Foreign Fighter Bomber Group of the United States Air Force. The 2nd Squadron operated this type of aircraft for about 2 to 4 years before converting to the F-86 Sabres, which I'd love to build at some point. I've just primed the pieces directly on the sprue, and as a result it came out quite well. However, in this episode I'm going to be pointing out everything that didn't go so well so that you can learn from my mistakes and improve your own builds as well. One of the mistakes that I made was spraying the sprue on the grass in my garden. This left some unwanted marks from the grass blades, and it's a basic mistake. But please always make sure that you spray while the sprue is suspended and not on the grass like I did. Some of the marks on the underside of the fuselage stayed all the way through to the end of the build and were quite difficult to get rid of. Okay, so just start by priming and spraying the interior of the cockpit. This small black section here was the radio box that sat behind the pilot in the cockpit. I was wondering why the sprue joints in the propeller were in this specific location, but later realized that they would be hidden by the nose cone. And I'd just like to ask, if you are enjoying these videos, please do subscribe and give us a like. That would be much appreciated. And then the cockpit was finally starting to take shape, and I just took a bit of extra time to paint in some of the details on the radio, such as the terminals. I actually ran out of my cockpit green color from AK, so I combined these two colors from Tamiya to give me a slightly off gray cockpit green, which came out quite nicely in the final color. Here's another mistake that I made, and I incorrectly thinned the paint too much, which produced this effect here, which is really uneven. So I had to respray that with my new mixed color, and although there was a little bit of overspray, I was generally happy with the result. Just taking some time to paint in the smaller details of the cockpit here. So here on the nose cone, I was just spraying this with XF 7 flat red, and again I just couldn't get the mixing of the thinner ratio quite right, so I had to do some respraying to get a nice flat finish. And now I can just take a bit of time to apply some neutral wash by Ammo. Okay, so here on the fuselage, I'm just removing the paint from the parts that will bond together. I'm just taking some sandpaper to make sure that I get a really nice flush finished. I took some extra time to make sure everything would line up properly. And here we can see the cockpit finally ready to be added to the fuselage. Just a couple of clamps to hold that in place. Leave that to dry for a while. Okay, so here's a method that I found on the internet where I'm not actually using any masking tape, just a piece of cardboard to quickly then mask off and spray some flat yellow to the propellers. This is a really quick and easy way to paint the propeller, and I was really happy with the result. Again, it was really important that I got the paint mix quite right to get the right consistency. Then for joining the fuselage, I really took my time to do a lot of dry testing to make sure that I'd get that flush finish and get a nice smooth join. And then just working my way around the fuselage with some extra thin poly cement. Here I had to make a bit of a jig to hold the fuselage in place so that the clamps didn't slip off. Here I'm just using my pin vise to prepare the holes for the rockets. Just trying to ensure a nice smooth finish there. And there we go, all the holes prepared in the fuselage. So I noticed that some of the poly cement had leaked out and damaged the paint a little bit here, and I had used a little bit too much, so I'll have to go over that a bit later. Here I'm just showing you the comparison between where I've removed the areas to fuse together for the wings. And here I'm just adding the fins in, but I used a little bit too much super glue, and you can see that it actually removed a bit of the paint, so I'll have to go over that again with some more primer a bit later. Okay, so I'm just giving the canopy a good wash to remove any excess dirt and grime before I mask it off. I used some really small strips of tape to mask off the canopy. And then just using some super clear super glue just to prevent any frosting on the canopy. And then place the canopy on like that, and with some VMS masking liquid, just mask off the rest of the canopy. Also tried to sand the cowling as much as possible to get a smooth finish, but lesson learned, and maybe one for somebody else, that I didn't quite spend enough time doing that, and I could still see the seam on the cowling, which in my next model is something I'm going to try to avoid. And here are some areas where I've had the primer removed just from either sanding or from some of the super glue, which I'll need to go over with some primer again. And there on the bottom side you can see actually the marks that were caused by the grass blades, which I mentioned a bit earlier. I spent some time studying the recommended colors for the rockets. They were supposed to be white with silver tips and an olive colored warhead. However, when I compared them to the Ames decal sheet, the majority of the rocket was actually an olive color with silver tips. So I decided to follow the decal sheet for consistency. Okay, and now I'm ready to spray the AK Extreme Metal Aluminium color. for the body of the aircraft, and this really was such a beautiful color. And just a quick note to make sure that your airbrush is really squeaky clean every time you switch colors. That'll just save you a lot of time and effort if your airbrush is just always clean and that there's no residual paint in there. I spent so much time just cleaning the airbrush to get that nice flow of paint going through it, and you want that to be really, really good, especially for this kind of paint. I then masked off the fuselage using 2 pieces of A4 paper to spray this khaki color on the cowling. I assume this was done to reduce the glare for the pilots. And still, even with the masking, I got a little bit of overspray there on the wing, which I'll have to touch up a little bit later. And once that was dry, I could then apply 3 layers of the super clear varnish in preparation for the decals. I always apply extra thin poly cement to both the top and bottom of the decal just to soften it and get it to conform to the panel lines. Unfortunately, the decal was quite brittle and one of them broke, but luckily I had a spare to replace it. Did some research on the name of the decal that I'm adding to the aircraft here, and I couldn't find out more about it, but if you know who this was, please let me know in the comment section below. After that, I can just add some color to the smaller pieces and remove the masking for the tires. Another item that I could have improved on were the bays for the undercarriage. They actually should have been the cockpit green color, but I just missed that. And I tried to remove the masking here, but it was sticking to the VMS masking liquid. So I decided to leave that and I would paint it manually by hand later. But there's the propeller and we are done with this build. Thank you so much for watching. Okay, well, that's it for today. Thank you so much for watching. If you like this, please give us a like and subscribe. And if there's anything you'd like to see improved, please let me know. Thank you, and see you in the next one.